Well, today we have a special guest coming all the way from London. We've got Mr. Whisper, Vol Bacall. Vol, how you doing? And thank you so much for taking the time to meet with us today.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. Absolutely privileged to be here and very excited to be on the show.
Well, good. And would like to hear a little bit about you and about your photography. My understanding is that you kind of specialize in street photography.
Yes. So my name's Balwinder Bartler. I'm also known as Mr. Whisper. I do street photography and I'm also a Fujifilm ambassador. And I like to currently specializing in low light street photography.
Which we're going to be sharing some of your images and talking about them with our viewers here in just a moment. But I'd like to know a little bit more about you. Now, before you got into street photography, my understanding is you did commercial photography?
Well, actually, before I became a full-time street photographer or photographer, I worked in advertising actually, and I was very happy in my job. I was doing lots of kind of digital initiatives, and I think it was at my final full-time role where I was digital creative director for Samsung, and I was drafted in because social media was becoming this big source of kind of advertising, and no one really knew how to harness that for big campaigns and how brands could work with them. So Samsung brought me in to kind of ensure that social media would sit at the heart of a lot of our digital campaigns. So being someone who likes to practice what they preach, got involved with Twitter, Facebook, Tumblr, WordPress. I had to go at all of them, but sadly, a lot of them were to do with writing, so I wasn't very good. And it was only when Instagram launched, which luckily my wife told me about. She said, "Hey, all the cool kids in South Korea are using this brand new app. It's called Instagram. I think you should have a look into it." And I was immediately addicted. Being a visual storyteller, I thought uploading a photo with my phone. This is the first time that I feel like photography could be for me, because always in my advertising career, people was like, "Oh, creative directors should always have a camera around their neck taking photos of things." And for me, I found photography very, very technical, and I was a bit scared of it. But Instagram opened up this world of people with a smartphone being able to share photos. And so, when the two kind of gelled together, I found myself making photos every day on the way to work, because that would be my only opportunity, working long hours in advertising. So I found that, shooting on the underground in close proximity to people soon became my thing. And I would get, a lot of encouragement from my Instagram community. And I would just spend way too long doing that. I would get home from work at about 8 o'clock after taking a few photos on the way home, and I would be sitting there editing them on my phone. And then next thing I knew, it was 11 p.m. and I hadn't had dinner, and I was like, this is something I feel that I'm really into now, and maybe I can make a career out of it, a stepping stone out of it. Because I knew that friends of mine were doing very well on Instagram and working with brands. And so I thought, what I did actually was I just put my email under my bio, because back in the day it wasn't something that was a default thing. So I remember after doing that, in the following weeks, I got approached by Jaguar, Adidas, and Lonely Planet to do some projects, which was incredible. And from there, I just thought, this is something that I could potentially do full time, because it was an unknown territory to brands, as I said. And being from advertising, I spoke the language, I spoke all their jargon. So I was able to take on campaigns, not have all the kind of politics that goes with it, but be able to produce pure visuals for brands, which would kind of align with my vision. So that was over 12 years ago. I did take 2 years to transition. I freelanced in advertising while doing photography full time, but that was still with my smartphone. And it was only at a point where I finished a project with Lacoste, and they said to me that, oh, we love all the photos you've taken. We'd love to put them in our stores across Europe. So here's a big fat check. And I said to them, hold on, I've only shot these with my iPhone 4. So, at most they're going to be able to be blown up to A5. So it was at that point when that check was torn up, I said, this is never going to happen to me again. I'm going to go and get myself a real camera. And that's when I was introduced to the Fujifilm X-T1. And yeah, I've not looked back since. I've rolled through the XT series, now using the X-T5 with the X100VI, which suits all my personal and client needs.
I got another question for you. Just curious, how did you come up with the moniker Mr. Whisper?
So Mr. Whisper was actually born back in my advertising days. So working those long hours, I remember I always liked to do personal projects, passion projects outside of work. And so I would make sticker packs, I would make little toys, I would make posters, anything that sat outside of work would sit under Mr. Whisper Productions. And then when social media started, I didn't really trust the internet. And so I brought back Mr. Whisper and used it on all the different platforms. And it's stuck, and it's now become my brand, and people seem to remember it quite well.
Well, good. And we want to encourage everybody to go out to Instagram and check out Mr. Whisper.
Thank you.
Well, let's go ahead and get into some of your photography. That's the real reason we're here, and why I think most people are tuning in out of curiosity. And one of the things I noticed that you love to do, of course, you mentioned rainy London, that you love to do pictures with the rain steam on the transport. I'm going to start with one here, and can you see that all right?
Oh, yes.
Can you tell a little bit about that picture and the fact that you do a lot of these rainy day pictures at night, too, at night?
Yes, of course. So, at night when I'm walking around, and with that particular shot as well, I like to, in my photographs, I like to have some kind of little symbol or some reference that it's being taken in London. And this neon light, which was a great light source at night, very important when you're doing night photography, caught my eye. It's on Dean Street, which was quite a popular street in London's Soho area. Actually, a street that I used to work on. So a bit more meaning for me. And so, when I saw it, my first approach was to try and shoot it straight on as I saw it, waiting for someone interesting to go by. But then, as I kind of explored the area, once I find something that's caught my eye, I try to take photos from somewhere that's going to be a little bit more unique, something a bit more intriguing and inviting for my audience. So I went across the road, and then I saw that there was a black car opposite. So I thought, if I can reflect the neon sign off the top of the bonnet as well, just to give it some foreground depth and some layering, that would make the photo more interesting. So that's how that particular photo came about.
Well, I've got another one here that's somewhat similar. Again, it's through another theme I see a lot, that you like taking through windows. And
so that was taken quite recently, actually, and that was on one of my workshops that I do with like numerous people. And I remember this is taken in Chinatown, which is like a very busy area. I'm not sure if you got a chance to visit it while you were.
Yes, we did. Indeed, we did.
So it's a great street. It's full of shop fronts, and as you mentioned, I love to shoot through windows. There's something very inviting and kind of voyeuristic about it, but I also love the framing of it.
I remember the red lanterns all over the street.
Yes. They make for some great depth when you're shooting people up close. So I remember walking past this window, and I could see half of the guy, but his head was completely silhouetted when he'd move into certain positions. So after a few attempts, I'd got my camera in the right angle and the right settings. I managed to get a photo of him with his head silhouetted out, but the rest of his body kind of you could see as a real person. So that's something I like to do as well. Not to give the whole photo away. It would have been very easy just to shoot him all in focus, but as I leant down, I was able to silhouette his face and keep the rest of his body, which is what interested me.
And there's another one, and I love the abstract of this image here.
Oh yes. So that's probably one of my favorite photos recently, and that was shot. That was actually shot that was one of the photos made for the global launch of the Fujifilm X106. So I was tasked with going out and showing its low light capabilities, surprise, surprise, and how well the six stops of stabilization work really well. So I remember I'd been out for a few attempts with the camera, and I was just getting to know it. We were building a relationship, and I was starting to see where its strengths were. And after coming back from about 3 shoots, I think, I realized that it really performs well in the rain. It's got so much detail in the 40 megapixels that it gives off. So I found this. I was roaming around again. Soho is like my favorite area. It's always bustling with people, interesting people, and there's lots of natural light to play with. So again, I saw this lady in the window, and it's really important as well when I'm doing commercial street photography work that the faces aren't recognized, because I really want to capture those candid moments as opposed to pulling out a model release form and saying, hey, I'm going to shoot you through the window, make sure you're full of smiles and stuff. None of that for me. I want it completely natural. Mm-hmm. So the fact that it was the window was, had the layer of steam and the droplets on it, and you couldn't make out the face clearly. That's what drew me to that. And there was also lovely bits of color around, which really helped with the color palette that I had created.
Good. And there's another one here, and I'm just kind of going through and randomly picking out ones that catch my eye, but this one really caught my eye here.
Oh, yes. Yeah, that's so that one was taken on Fleet Street.
I'd give this one 11, by the way. It looks like it makes a 10.
Yeah, it's called number 10. That's what I call that photo. Yep. But again, I saw this walking along Fleet Street, doing one of my normal photo walks, and I'd never noticed this window before. And I just saw this big number 10 popping out at me, and I thought and then it also had some decals on the window of a mini cityscape. Mm-hmm. So it was like, oh, this is lovely. It's shot on London's Fleet Street, which is well known for it used to be known for its newspapers. Mm-hmm. And you've got this beautifully round window, which is quite different to your normal just square windows, which I look out for. And then it was just a matter of me waiting for the perfect silhouette to come along. So thankfully it was raining, and a few people moved past, but didn't quite get the timing or the composition right. But eventually this guy moved through, and I managed to capture him really pin sharp, which is what I was looking for.
I want to mention too, you're probably one of the few photographers that pray for rain.
It's quite a trend now, but yes, definitely. It just adds that layer of, I don't know, to me it adds cinema, it adds a bit of mystery, it adds a bit of curiosity. And the irony of me cleaning my cameras all the time only to go out and shoot through dirty windows. There's something lovely about that juxtaposition as well. So I do definitely look out for rain. It brings a lot of artistic qualities with it.
Well, we have another photographer that we've had on our show. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Clyde Butcher. Clyde Butcher is a well-known American photographer that's down in the Florida Everglades. He's also known as the Ansel Adams of Florida because he shoots black and white. But he also loves rain because he says the clouds and the skies. He does landscapes, by the way, black and white landscapes. But he also loves rain. And speaking of rain, I've got another one here that also caught my eye.
Yeah, again, that one was taken in that was at Piccadilly Circus, and I remember we just had some fresh rain, and it just died up, just finished off. So I was wandering around, and suddenly I noticed, I'm always looking into puddles and reflections from any kind of surface I can get a photo from. And at first, I was just shooting into the puddle to try and get the clearest silhouette I could with a little bit of color from the massive screens that you get at Piccadilly Circus. But then I realized if I moved a little bit further back, I'd be able to capture the feet of the person as well as the top half of them. So kind of splitting them up, but using the puddle as the main source or where I want the focus to be. And then also the added bonus of the layering with the feet of the person at the top. So I kind of like the composition, which makes you think twice instead of just working it out instantly.
How about telling us a little bit about your philosophy and your approach as far as you're using the Fuji cameras, ISO, as far as your aperture settings. How do you set your camera in preparation?
Yeah. So I try to keep my settings as simple as possible because ultimately I want my eyes on the street and not fiddling around with the camera to miss a moment. So I will have my shutter speed set to a minimum of 1/125th of a second. And I can easily move that up to 1/250th or 1/500th of a second, depending on how much available light is on the scene I'm looking at. And then with my ISO, I kind of have a little rule that I stick to, and I try not to go above 3,200 because the cameras these days they're so good in low light that you don't really need to go above that. I'll go to 6,400 at a stretch if I feel I can't walk away from the scene. But generally, if it's too low light and I find that I'm not able to really see the scene with my eyes, but the camera's autofocus is picking up all the people, I'll walk away because I know when I go back into post-production that it's the photo is going to be a bit surreal because I'm going to be lifting the shadows, lifting the exposure just to make the photo visible. And then lastly, my aperture, I normally will have that set. That's for me to like. It's more of an aperture priority if we're speaking in like a mode.
I was going to ask, do you use aperture priority or manual or?
Well, it's because it's on the lens itself. That's the last thing I will adjust, and it's the easiest thing to adjust.
Okay.
So I'll arrive at a scene. I know my shutter speed is right because 1/25th of at a minimum of 1/25th of a second, I'm definitely going to be able to capture the motion. I'm not trying to capture people running, but generally at a walking pace, that'll be able to capture them. And then with my ISO set, I have that set in like I mentioned, up to my maximum of 3,200, and then my aperture is the last thing I will adjust because if I pull my camera up to my face and I see that the neon lights or the lights are overexposed, I'll drop it down a few stops to make sure that they are definitely exposed correctly.
So I assume you're using manual then in adjusting. Is that correct?
Well, I'd say my ISO is in bracketed kind of auto modes.
Oh, okay.
So during the day, so with my ISO, I have that bracketed. So during the day, I'll have it from 125 to 400. Then when it goes into golden hour, or if I walk into a kind of darker situation during the day, then I'll go from 400 to 800. And then during the night, I'll go from 800 to 1600 or 800 to 3200. And, so that's I don't really have to worry about it. As soon as I'm at a scene, I can just flick it to the appropriate bracketing that I need. That not like image bracketing, but
right.
That particular perimeter. And then, like I said, just adjust the aperture at the last minute if I need to.
I'm glad you said that because I just started using the auto ISO myself, putting the bracket extremes, and it's working out very well for me. And I just started doing that maybe 6 months ago.
Yeah, I think we both were out doing some kind of lowish light shooting and where the light was changing, because we do a lot of outdoor photography.
Yeah.
But
Yes.
I would want to know, do you have a go-to lens that that is the one that you want to use for, I'd say, 90% or more of your photographs?
So since yes, I think, and I'm trying to pull away from this now because a lot of my people have been noticing, and they're like, "Did you just use that one lens?" And I have no, I've got a whole library of prime lenses, but my go-to is the XF 56 millimeter 1.2, the new one, which is weather resistant, which is great. And that works out as an 85 equivalent for anyone who's not sure how the crop sensors work. And I absolutely love that lens. The quality it pushes out is just, it never lets me down. Coupled with when I put it on autofocus, it's fast enough to capture the people that I'm looking for. And yeah, and the fact that I'm also able to crop into that image if I really want to pull out the details. So yeah, that's definitely my go-to lens. And also that I like the 33 mil. I have the 23 mil, and then I use my wider lenses more for video. So my 10-24 or my 16 when I'm doing some video stuff.
But I wanted to ask a question too, based upon what Fred just asked. So you use your camera full frame or APS-C?
It's APS-C.
APS-C, okay.
I thought, by the way, you were talking about the crop factor. So.
Yes.
And that's interesting because Jim tends to use both.
Yes.
And I tend to use APS-C quite a bit for the type of photography because that's what works well for me. So it's interesting that you've been able to utilize that to kind of be able to kind of push in just a little bit extra with that 50 millimeter lens.
Yeah, I mean, especially with the latest X-T5 going at 40 megapixels. It's just, it's a dream to work with.
Well, we want to thank you so much for coming on. Do you have any final words of wisdom that you'd like to leave our viewers with?
I'd just say, if you've not tried street photography, you should try it out. It doesn't have to be confrontational like a lot of people are scared of. I find, walking with the 85 mil equivalent, I get to keep a safe distance, but I also see the moments. And it's, I think one misconception that people have is the fact that it's a spontaneous sport, shall we say, but it's not. You can really take your time with street photography. Like I said, when I was explaining a lot of the photos that we went through, if I see something that catches my eye, I really like to work that scene. So, take your time, enjoy it. Doesn't have to be confrontational, but once you get into it, you will never be bored ever again.
I agree. I know it's out of my comfort zone. I have done it, and I encourage everybody else to go out and try it. And hopefully your images will inspire people to try it. One more question. Do you have a website besides Instagram?
Yes, I do. My website is mrwhisperstudios.com.
Good. We're going to put that down here.
Thank you. And yeah, you can see a lot of my commercial work there. For my personal work, you can go to my Instagram channel. And if you want tips or tricks, you can go to my YouTube channel, which I'm slowly resuscitating as we speak.
Good.
And lastly, if I can mention my book that's coming out in August.
Please. I apologize. I meant to mention that. Your London book. Yes.
Yes. After walking the streets of London predominantly on Thursday to Sunday evenings, I've been documenting nightlife in London. And so this is my first solo book called London After Dark, which, documents London at night, but also holds my favorite collection of photos, which I'm very proud to share with everyone finally. So, yes, it will be out in August.
Good. That's from Trope Publishing, and I imagine it'll be available on Amazon.
Yeah.
And all the booksellers. Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Good. Well, thank you again. I really appreciate your time.
Oh, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Keep shooting.
Yes, you guys too.
Okay.
All the best.
Hi, if you enjoyed this video, please go down here, subscribe.
Here.
There you are. Subscribe. Give us a comment. Even hit a like.
And if you want to be notified when we post new ones, hit the little bell down there too.
Yeah. Ding ding.